My name is Tal. I'm a senior support engineer in Zerto. I've been working with Zerto since late 2014. I'm going to give you a quick tips and tricks presentation, how to help us support our virtual environment with Zerto. So today we'll be talking a bit about bitmap and delta syncs, what's their difference, what they're all about. We're going to demystify VRA compression. What's it for? Why are we doing it? Can we make it faster? We're going to be talking about logs and all the pain that involves around logs, because we know as support without logs, we don't really have anything. Networks, we can't live without them, and they can cause us some serious pain. We're also going to be going over some miscellaneous tools we all use, stuff that helps us save time, and great labor and manual tasks and work. We're also going to be featuring the commandlets, kind of a brief overview about the commandlets and what we can do with it. And we're going to be talking about collaboration, because this is what we're all here for. Okay, so we're going to start with the delta sync. What is the delta sync? So a delta sync occurs when we need, Zerto or the VRAs needs to verify the consistency of a protected and a recovery disks. So that can happen for a few occasions or for a few reasons. One of them is if you are doing a live failover and reverse protection is enabled. So once we fail over, we now need to compare the two disks to make sure we're still consistent. It can also happen if we precede a VPG. So if we have VMs in the protected side, but we have their disks at the recovery side, we can seed those disks, and instead of an initial sync, do a delta sync. Now, reverting a protected VM back to a snapshot also triggers a form of inconsistency, because if you'll think about it, when we take a checkpoint, you just reverted that VM back, let's say, 5 minutes. So we're taking a checkpoint it's not true. It's not consistent with the recovery side. So we have to delta sync in order to compensate for the changes. Now, during the delta sync, the VPG would go through an MD5 checksum comparison of the two disks between the protected and recovery side. And then it's going to write any missing blocks, which is effectively the delta sync. A bitmap sync, a bit different. It occurs when the VRA cannot send the protected IOs at the moment to the recovery side. Now, we will discuss various reasons in the next slide, but the general notion is I'm a protected VRA, but I cannot send my IOs right now. It could be network, it could be slow storage, it could be a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about in the next slide. So Zerto uses a bitmap, exactly how it sounds, a bitmap, to track changes between the protected and recovery disks. So when the VRA connectivity is restored, let's just say it had a disconnection. So if I have a disconnection from the recovery side, I still have the protected VMs writing IOs, right? It doesn't stop. So I have to keep track of all these IOs. The VRA needs to say, okay, well, I have some writes going on, but I can't send them over right now. I'm disconnected. What do? Bitmap. So now that the VRA connectivity is restored, we know which blocks have changed, so we can send them over to the recovery side and do a quick bitmap sync. Now let's talk a bit about bitmap sync's reasons. Now, there are various reasons and scenarios where we can hit a bitmap sync or start a bitmap sync. The one, which is the most obvious one, is a disconnection between the protected and recovery VRAs, an actual network disconnection. Like we said, IOs are still being written, so we have to keep track of those. If the journal or recovery volumes encounter any storage error, also triggers an issue, and we need to bitmap. The source or protected storage encounters IO issues or errors returned from storage. That's also going to put me in a bitmap sync. The VRA is unable to send the right IOs fast enough. So this could be a slow network. The network, and we have also a situation where we have a lot of protected IOs or a burst of protected IOs, and I have a connectivity back to the recovery side, but I don't have the bandwidth to replicate all these IOs, to send all these IOs that fast. So we go into a bitmap. So we're sending the IOs, but the protected VM is writing faster than we can send it. So we need to keep track of that in a bitmap. Also, the recovery storage. If he's slow, that means that the recovery VRA cannot write the changes to the recovery volumes fast enough, which again triggers a bitmap sync. Now, when we replicate IOs, when we are protecting VMs, we need a way to send that data over, but you can't just send raw IOs, right? It's just going to take the entire bandwidth. It's going to take us a lot of time. So we use compression. So how does compression work with Zoto? Basically, we have the VRA intercepts and buffers the protected IO at the host level, at the ES6 or Hyper-V host level. The VRA compresses these IOs using CPU resources. Compression is using CPU instead of memory, or more CPU than memory. And the VRA sends the compressed IOs across the WAN to the recovery site where the IOs are being written to journal and decompressed back into the recovery volumes. Yeah. Excuse me? Yeah. Can't quite hear the question.
CPU on the VRA?
Yes. Yeah, it's the VRA that compresses and decompresses the IOs. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Okay, so we have some concerns with VRA compression. What can we expect that can cause issues with compression? So the main reason a VRA would have issues with compression is CPU constraints on the protected site. So for compression, we need more CPU cycles than decompression. Compression is far harder, I guess, than decompression. So if the VRA doesn't have enough CPU resources or is constrained, it cannot take more CPU than it needs for this compression, then we'll have some issues with the compression rate. So how can we boost it? Yes, sir.
If we're doing a one-to-many and one of them is local, is there a way to turn the compression off?
Turn the compression off?
Yeah, for the local copy.
You'll still, okay, I get that question. We don't have a compression per VM kind of feature, but that's a good feature.
Compression for the VPG would be fine too.
Yep.
Yeah, compression is set for VPG. And it's an option now, 5.0? It's now 5.0. Okay, thank you.
There you go. Okay, so we know that VRA needs CPU to compress. So boosting the compression would be adding some CPU. We can do that by adding a CPU core to the VRA. Now, just adding one would be enough. Adding more than one is not going to do much. And same for memory. The VRA can only utilize just about 4 to 6 gigabytes of memory. So basically, we'll need to go to the virtual environment and add the protected VRA, specifically the protected VRA, added a CPU core. Now, why do we do that for the protected and recovery VRAs? Is because if you fail over and have reverse protection, the recovery VRA now becomes the protected VRA. So it's going to have that compression again. So we have a quick explanation with screenshot on how we do that from vSphere. I'm sure you all know the edit settings and the menu, context menu of vSphere. So we need to shut down the VRA because we can't add CPU to a live machine. Nope. We changed the CPU cores to 2. This one says sockets, I think. Nope, cores. And then we power on the VRA. We go to edit settings just to make sure we're on 2 cores. Let's talk about logs. Must be an easier way, right? There you go. Okay, so what we'll talk about today. We're going to be talking about log collection then versus now. A bit about what is remote log collection, exciting new feature coming in starting from 5.0. We're going to be talking about security, because it's a big concern for everybody. We're going to be talking about the remote log collection architecture, and about how to enable remote log collection. So back then, up until now, if I needed to see what's wrong with the ZVM, sync, whatever the issue is, I would need logs. Without logs, I'm blind. But there is an issue. There's an issue with covering the time of the issue. There is the issue of collecting the logs, of uploading the logs. This is how it used to look up until now. You would open a support case, and then you would troubleshoot the issue with the level 1 support as best you can. And then L1 support at some point decides we need logs because we can't progress further with troubleshooting. So we either go on a WebEx session with the customer and collect the logs, or we ask them to collect the logs, like that. We just send you, we need the alerts, the VPGs, this and that VRAs, this and that sites. And using the diagnostics utility on the ZVM, you would collect the logs and hope to God it will upload, and hope to God it covers the issue. Because if not, you'll have to do this all over again. And then, of course, we need to repeat this process if we'll have other sites, not, like I said, not covering the issue, not covering the time frame. This is how it looks in the Zero Diagnostics utility when we want to collect logs manually. Well, manually. You would put all this information manually, so that's a lot of room for human error. And then in comes the remote log collection for the rescue. From the ZVM GUI, all you do is click remote support, enable it per case or per 30 days, and voila, you take it from there. Excuse me?
Cloud Manager.
So you control that per ZVM. It's a really nice feature to control all of them from the Cloud Manager. Yeah. Oh, no, we don't have anything set up yet for the Cloud Manager, but we'll know. Excuse me? This is from 5.0. So what is remote log collection? Remote log collection allows me to take logs and put you out of the equation. So I can just collect logs whenever I need, what time frame I need, based on what you allowed me. Is it a support ticket, number, or 30 days? Like I said, basically it takes you out of the equation. I won't need your help to get the logs I need. Absolutely, absolutely. The log collection methods are all preserved. The Zero Diagnostics utility still in the ZVM. This is just an easier, faster way for us. So you're worried about security, obviously, right? Remote log collection, this sounds, no worries. It's an outbound connection only. The connection itself terminates once the case closes. It's linked by a case number to Salesforce API, to our ticketing system. So when I close the case, I can't collect any more logs. It has limited access, so there's a transmitter from the ZVM that has an outbound connection to AWS. You can't go in, just go out. And of course, we're using HTTP and HTTPS protocol from the ZVM to an AWS S3 secured bucket. We're going to be using port 80 or 443, just the standard HTTP, HTTPS ports for transferring.
Any changes in the length of time that the logs are retained?
No, not at all. So we basically trigger a log collection in the background, same way as you would do it manually, only this time there's no manual intervention at all. I do that from my ticketing system. I just click get logs, and I get the logs.
So how long before they're reviewing these logs and talking to us?
You-
So we're at
Okay.
So how long before you parse those logs, right? You're still parsing, yes?
Yes, of course. So that depends.
Minutes, right?
What's that?
It's minutes.
Yeah, it should be minutes.
Roll back to roll back a couple screens.
What do you want?
You know, the old way that you're doing it.
All right. This?
Yep, back, okay, so right here.
Yeah.
So I open up the support case, troubleshoot, right, we do WebEx. Why can't they look at the logs right there?
Because we need to parse it. We need to parse the logs. We have tools that parse the logs that gives us more information that we can discover live. We have ways to troubleshoot live, to see logs live, but it's more constructed to using the parser. It has information, gives me information from vCenter, from the ZVM, and puts it together in a way that I can truly see it. If I wanted to troubleshoot logs live, I would have to go in every log individually and compare them. It's just going to take longer.
Not only that, but we have tools on our log server that allows us to extract information that we can't in the live environment.
Are any of those tools available?
You're talking about the parsing tools? Not really, because we haven't felt the need up until now. I mean, I never heard a customer kind of say, I want the log parser.
Well, you're
But
the only vendor that does this.
They're not customer-facing tools.
Yeah,
at the
basically.
moment.
Yes, sir.
If we have a series of VPGs like we're talking about earlier, do you have information about how to connect each one and like each support ticket should be opened by giving like the IP of the CVM, sorry. Like if we say like this CVM is the one that's having a problem, do you have information like connecting that to how to get to it, or should we start with each ticket with like the name of the CVM, the IP of it?
No, so that's the beauty of remote log collection. I have the information that the diagnostics utility has. So remotely, I have a web accessed GUI where I can say, okay, I'm going to collect logs for, like, say, 12 hours from this and that VPG. It's all listed. This and that sites. So you don't have to say anything except, hi, I'm Tom, and I have a problem with VPG SQL 1 between sites Denver and Colorado.
Everything that you guys did manually in the log collection wizard, we can do remotely. We have all those options.
There we go.
The period of time that we want to collect the logs, as long as it's enabled on each site, we can see all the sites and collect them from the appeared sites.
Enabling the remote log collection, it's Friday night, nobody's in the office, and something of an outage happened. Will that trigger automatically a case, and you will contact the customer, or the customer should make the first step to initiate the ticket?
No, so we still need to have that first customer step to open the ticket, because we wouldn't know, we don't have a system to automatically, discover.
Or will that automatically engage with the customer?
So I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The call home,
Yeah.
errors you're talking about. Does it initiate tickets on?
No, so it doesn't initiate tickets. Yeah.
Sounds like maybe that would be a great support addition.
Yep.
So once the ticket is initiated, the log collection goes backwards in time, or is it only going forward?
No. It goes backwards just the same as the diagnostics utility. You choose the time frame, 12 hours, 8 hours, unlimited.
That's a lot of wasted time.
For what?
For, you guys can parse those logs, when we should be on the web, that's reading the logs.
No, so in,
We need to read the logs.
okay, so when you're in an outage, it's probably a Sev 1, and I'm on the session, I'm not letting go until we fix the issue, so. We're- No, so if I wanted to know the RCA, the root cause for what triggers this, and I have something to fix the environment right now, obviously I'm going to use the parsing tools to parse the logs and look at them later. But during a session, like a severity 1 session where you have an outage, you have engineers on the ZVM looking at the logs. So level 2 support can look at logs live, and they have more skills, obviously, than level 1 to figure out what's the pain point.
Not every situation is going to call for log analysis. There'll be
Right.
certain circumstances where you'll see a situation, you'll understand that, okay, I've encountered this before, this is, we can try this, we can try that. It's only when we've exhausted our efforts on the WebEx that we will try to pull the logs out of it for ourselves to understand if there's maybe a new bug or a new issue that we haven't encountered before. We can look at them offline. We have some tools that allow us to extract more information than we can in your environment. Also, if we need to engage with development and they need to look at something, we have that ability to engage them. So if we're on the WebEx and we really need to be looking at the logs, that kind of takes us away from getting that to the next level. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of, it depends on the situation. But
Yeah.
depends on, no two issues are the same, basically.
Yes, if you'll, yeah,
Are
sorry.
logs pulled periodically so we could go back and get historical data, or only when there's a case?
So no, it's not being pulled periodically, only on demand. Not yet. So, there we go.
Yeah, you submit your log bundle, and their parsing tool automatically parses it for critical issues, flags those for you so you get a report back, and the assigned engineer gets that report back. And typically, if you're on the stick about it, by the time the case gets assigned to somebody, that person will already have it, so they can immediately look at it and have the data right in front of them, before they even call you back.
Yeah. I know. It's all good. Okay, so we talked about remote log collection. Talked a bit about security. Let's talk about networks. So we know the importance of networks, right? Without networks, we're disconnected. We don't have any way to reach the recovery site. We don't have replication. We don't have anything. And I think networks, it probably is the highest percentage of longest cases I've ever investigated. If there is a problem with a network, it's going to be very, very hard to investigate what's going on. If you're saying, okay, my network's fine, but there's a disconnection, and the network is not really fine, it's going to take us a lot of time to investigate it. So a bit about the symptoms. Common customer symptoms of poorly functioning networks is like elongated initial syncs, extended RPOs, more bitmap syncs than you would expect, right? You keep seeing bitmaps, you're saying, okay, I don't think this should be like this. Network congestion. We actually have an alert about that, saying network congestion. VRA disconnect, that's never fun. And your DR site is down, so if your DR site is down, you cannot recover. That's why networks are so important to the business. A properly sized network, properly maintained network can mitigate all of these issues. So let's talk about the supported WAN links we use in Zoto. Obviously, we support LAN, MPLS, IP link over fiber, site-to-site VPN. We should note that we don't support NAT. So if you want to have NAT between the sites, you have to put that within the VPN. So a bit of what network considerations in terms of the VRA. And specifically, if we'll go back here, we'll see the site-to-site VPN and MPLS. The VRA's default MTU, the maximum transmit unit, is 1492. But a VPN connection sometimes has a larger header for the connection. So each packet has a bigger header. We need to tweak the MTU down to accommodate for that. So some networks along the wire, if you have 4 routers or 4 switches, they doesn't necessarily all support the same MTU size. That's why we're talking about the consideration of 1492. We found that to be the sweet spot. But of course, if you open a support case about performance, if you feel like networks is something not working right, it could be MTU. Yes, sir.
So in that product guide, do we have a way of adjusting the NTU without having to open a support case? I understand you can't give us access to the VRA to do it ourselves, but it would be great if from in the CLI or UI, whatever, we can adjust that, it'd be great.
That's great feedback. I'm actually gonna maybe talk to you after the session. I've been writing for some support tools for support, and that could be one. It could be a great one.
We are able to adjust them on the VRAs, though, the MTU setting. So we'll make tests to make sure they're not fragmenting. We suspect that from the logs that the packets are fragmenting, and we can go into VRAs, and we'll get more into a multi-section tool that we have to allow us to connect to all the VRAs and make those changes all at once.
Okay, yeah, our guys were testing that in our environment because they suspected that we were getting that break apart of the package, but the things that would be nice to be able to adjust.
There's a super user account that if you open a case, you can ask for a super user account, and then one can create. It's a script that they use. You can create a user, and you'll be able to do some network troubleshooting with that user account. It's limited, but it allows you to do something like that.
That's it on the VRA?
Correct. Yeah.
Actually, I think he just answered my question, but it would be a request to be able to do like basic connectivity testing from the VRA. We have it ping some IP addresses or
Yes.
do some trace routes, things like that.
Yes.
But if
Yeah, so we,
limited access to things like that, it would be hugely beneficial.
yeah, okay, so we do have a tool that can do anything remotely on the VRAs, basically. It kind of offers a shell to all the VRAs, but we'll work on having features like that being passwordless, so you won't need a password to run connectivity tests, changing MTU, and all that good stuff. Yep. Okay, so in terms of network sockets, VRA uses as a default 8. It can use 16 and 40, but using more doesn't give you more, not with VRA sockets. And there's a good reason for that, but we're not going to go that deep in this presentation. Our minimum requested dedicated bandwidth is 5 megabits per second, which is fairly low. We're using WAN compression per VPG. Obviously, we support all the things from VPN firewalls to MPLS and network filters. The VRA do engage in PMTU discovery, so periodically they will check what they can send in terms of MTU. They're going to try 1492 first, and then they're going to go 2 rates lower and stop. So that can give me information when you collect the logs, okay, this VRA has an MTU issue. Okay, this VRA, okay, we saw the link and we saw that somewhere along the hops, one switch didn't support that 1492, we need to take it lower. The best case scenario for me is for us to adjust this automatically. So let's talk, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, the previous slide.
Yeah.
Is there any way via the API to tune the dedicated bandwidth? In the UI, you have the throttler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you go in via, I know you can't UI it, in the API, can you tune that and rate limit on a per VRA basis?
That's a good question. I'm not sure we can do that per VRA. I know the bandwidth regulator and bandwidth
That's global.
throttling is not global. It's global to the site, but it's going by VRA.
Now, but if you have a branch off the site and you only have a 20 megabit per second line, you're at the mercy of that global setting.
Right,
Does
right. Yes.
that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But it's a good question. I need to check that. I'm not sure myself if we have direct APIs for that stuff. So we talked about VRA's networks. Let's talk a bit about VRA network tools. We have something called zperf. Zperf is a test to basically test the effective bandwidth between two VRAs, or the way it basically mimics the way we replicate, and it tries to use all the bandwidth we can per socket. zcperf is basically the same way, but with a cloud connector in the middle of it. So if you're running through a cloud scheme, you're connecting the R as a service customers through ZCC, through a cloud connector, and running standard zperf just don't cut it because the protected customer site is connected to the ZCC IP and not the ZVM. Now I put this, put these two with the marks since we have scripts running these automatically. They're currently only available for us as support if you open a support ticket. But if any of you feel like the need to have it available for you and run it, please tell me. Please share this so I can use that feedback. There you go. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Okay.
We put these up here purposely not to teach you, but to get that
It's a very good feedback.
Trust me, all of this is because we want to try and fix it ourselves before we vote.
I like to hear that. We definitely want that. This is a joint effort. Okay. No, this is a great feedback because then I can use that to reiterate these tools and scripts as automatic. And then you can just run it and tell me, hey, Tal, I ran your scripts. This is what I came up with. Okay, back to the support tools a bit. iPerf. iPerf can be used to measure available bandwidth between the ZVMs. So basically, effectively, the zperf on a Windows box. Yes, sir.
Do you have any suggested settings for that to simulate the way the ZVM stuff?
The ZVM MTU?
Well, for iPerf,
Yeah.
bandwidth between ZVMs, you configure that for whether you want small, large types of transfers. Is there any suggested settings that we use?
There's no suggestion. The Windows using 1500 as the standard Ethernet MTU size, which is almost fine for everybody because the ZVM doesn't send a lot over the network. ZVM to ZVM, they don't send a whole lot between themselves. They use the VRAs and stuff like that, but we'll look at the iPerf for the ZVM if we'll suspect specifically that ZVM is having issues with MTU size. We also have a 0 to 1 sizing tool. That's a tool to help us understand our write workload so we can understand what bandwidth we need dedicated for 0. So what's the minimum amount of bandwidth we'll need to give 0 to function properly.
Before you go past that one, I'm curious in the audience.
Yeah.
Before you create a new VPG, how much write workload analysis is really being done to understand what's going to the network? Any minimal?
Not much. It varies. We just do it at the beginning to understand what's currently there and usually
Yeah, so what we do, it's kind of trial and error. We have a basic idea of our workload, like let's search for high IOP stuff. But in search, we'll watch at the dashboard and we'll go through and tune it properly. So it doesn't kind of share a line between the DR and all our other branches. It's kind of crazy how it's engineered, but we have a basic idea. We'll put it in the search and we'll watch it. We watch a dashboard, and if it gets kind of crazy, we'll start throwing it back. It's kind of a trial and error situation for us.
I would say that we would use the sizing tool a lot more if it wasn't so tedious. There was a way to make that more effective so it's not such a manual process of moving data and things like that. It's absolutely something we would use a lot more. But just when you're doing a deployment for 400 VMs, the man hours that are required to use the tool properly just make it.
So a tool that will develop that automatically select that write workload for a 24-hour period.
Sure.
Summarize for
run that weight and sizing tool, it's a freaking guessing game.
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing today may not be what I'm doing tomorrow. So it'd be nice to see a historical, ebb and flow of what my network is doing, so I can determine when the best time for me to deploy VPGs are.
You'd like a dynamic live.
I think once it's on the line, we could probably give you that information through the CVM. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll probably use some trends and stuff, but yes.
I'd like to be a smart person like that.
Maybe just another tab in CVM where you just go and pick the VM and let it monitor it for that X amount of time.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Well, that's in the keynote this morning, he was talking about becoming more predictive. And that was pretty exciting for me because, I heard somebody say that, you're not sure what the workload's going to be tomorrow, and that's 100% right. I'm working for a CSP, so our customers don't know. That makes it hard for us. We don't know. So it's constantly changing. So you don't find out they have a problem until it becomes a problem. So to be able to kind of see that workload ramping up and that IO ramp up, that's pretty exciting.
I don't know if everybody got a chance to, if you stop by on the booth and he showed the new analytics tool. A lot of stuff is in there now, especially for the journal sizing, which has always been a bit of a mystery, and also some of the IO stuff are amazing what they're able, because they aren't like now doing it ahead of time, but they have someone else with the IO that you can kind of guess with. So that's coming and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that's once it's within the.
Yeah, sure, it's not free, but if you have similar workloads that you're going to put in, at least you know to see what they're doing.
It's an important topic because we do get quite a few cases where it's just simply one size problem. It's not always an easy message to deliver, but it ends up being true. So it's very good feedback to get.
But yeah, I think what makes that, the tool itself is great, but what makes it so cumbersome is that you have, for me anyway, when I use the WAN and the journal sizing tool, I usually have to go write some custom stuff with Power CLI, to get change log tracking and network throughput and all that stuff to plug in numbers in there. So for me, it's kind of a two-step process. Use these tools and it makes it kind of an all-day thing, so that's kind of why we. So it's kind of, unless you're doing a big deployment, you use the tool, but for one-off, we'll just kind of do a trial and compare. Look at the analytics.
Yeah, and that follows everything that now they start recognizing that they have the data. It's in there.
Yeah.
Guessing ahead of time a little bit, but once it's in there, they're going to have a lot of tools to deep dive and top to bottom. And you can use that data to predict.
Yeah, fundamentally, it becomes a lot easier for us once it's in server control. If we can make it easier to add to that server market.
As a cloud provider, our biggest problem is the pre-sale. We do have a script that will go out and gather a lot of data that we need. But a lot of, before the deal is actually closed, a lot of customers aren't willing to run something like that. And not exactly sure what it's doing, so that they're here to do that. And it does come out pretty well. It's, we compare what we gathered from that tool to what they had in the numbers. But another big problem is most customers don't have a continuous data protection product. So it's really a shot in the dark. They may have numbers from back in the past, maybe most now. Those aren't the same numbers.
Yeah, I've had the same experience where some of these tools, they would help with that. After you get it and you kind of figure out some of the problems that are happening, that would be extremely helpful.
Okay.
Didn't mean to take too much time. It's important.
Yeah. Okay, so a bit about miscellaneous and useful tools we all use. Well, I use. Notepad++, I'm sure you guys know Notepad++, the free, available, and very versatile notepad. Beartail. Beartail is a small executable that allows you to look at logs live with syntax highlighting, keyword highlighting, so I can shoot the log file of the ZVM into this tool, look for specific exception, look for a specific thread, look for a specific task, and see it live. Commander is a multi-terminal console for Windows. It also integrates some Git commands, some Unix commands. I'm sure if you guys using Linux, it's a lot easier to grep and pipe that into less and stuff like that to look at logs or to search in logs. So this gives you that opportunity on Windows. And Wireshark, I'm not even sure I need to see another word. But these tools, the reason I'm mentioning them is because all these tools save us time and manual labor, manual work. They help us focus on the problem. Okay, I'm not sure in time, how much time we have left, but I'm going to breeze through the commandlets. Zerto PowerShell commandlets is basically as just a small installer you install in your ZVM or any other Windows box on your environment. It doesn't have to be the ZVM. And this allows you to do some tasks using PowerShell without the GUI. Now, like I said, it doesn't have to be the ZVM VM. I do provide the command you need to put to PowerShell to import the Zerto snap-in, so you'll know, so PowerShell will know what the commands are. Of course, we can load the snap-in automatically, so you won't have to run this command every time. Right here. This is a quick demo of how we implement this automatic snap-in import. So if you right-click the PowerShell, you'll see the target. If you add what I've wrote here, this thing, this will add it every time you open PowerShell. But what can we do with it? So I'm giving a quick example here of force remove protection group. For those of you who don't know, force removing a VPG is a situation where the VPG is in error state or is in a waiting to be removed state. And force remove automatically preserves the target disks, so you don't have to worry about whether it's going to preserve it or not preserve it. It's going to do it the same way. You can run this from PowerShell. Sorry. So running this just like that in the PowerShell commandlet will start an interactive kind of session. It's going to ask you some questions about what do you want to delete, obviously, right? We're force deleting a VPG. So the virtual protection group, that's the VPG name. It's going to be case sensitive. ZVM IP, like I said, you can run PowerShell commandlets from any Windows box and just give it the ZVM IP. The port will always be 9080. And I'm going to explain a bit about the credentials, which will always be administrator and password, just like that, administrator and password. Now, if you get to this part where it asks you, do you want to do this? And you say why, you should get back a GUID. This GUID is a task ID. It's the actual task ID that's going to be run on the ZVM. Now, obviously, we don't want to start an interactive kind of session every time we want to force delete something. So we have one-liners. So this is how it looks. This example in here in one line. All we do is provide it the name of the entity we're providing it. So ZVM IP would be localhost, -ZVM port 9080, -username administrator, -password, and the name of the VPG. I'm adding this confirm false just because this will help us, this will make PowerShell not ask me if I want to continue. Now, the greatest of all commandlets, obviously, is the get help Zerto, because it can give you a list of all the commandlets you can run and their respected arguments. For example, if I do help force remove protection group, it will give me everything the force protection group needs. But if I do a get help Zerto, I get all the commandlets I can run. Now, in terms of credentials, I just said that the username will always be administrator and the password will always be password. It's not because we're crazy, it's because there is a file called users.txt on the ZVM from which we're reading the credentials, which features a username, a tab, basically 4 spaces, and then a hash of the password. So a hash, like a SHA-1 hash of a password, just like that. This says password in SHA-1. And basically, you can just add any username you want there in users.txt. You can add a user. As long as it's followed by a tab and a hash of the password you would like, you can put as many credentials in there as you want. Sorry about that. Last but not least, collaborate. This is what we're all here for. And I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.